Welcome to This Week in Hearing. I'm Gael Hannan. This week, I'm so pleased to be talking with Kevin English. He is a man who, at one point in his life, was less than fit, less than healthy, and he changed all that. And his new healthy lifestyle expanded to include hearing help. So Kevin is the owner of Silver Edge Fitness in Wilmington, North Carolina, and also the host of the popular Over 50 Health and Wellness podcast. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Gail. I'm glad to be here. Excited to have a conversation about hearing health.
Always happy to talk about hearing health. So we're going to have kind of a free-ranging conversation here for a few minutes. But what I wanted to just start off is tell us about a little bit about your story, your transformation from how you used to be to how you are now. And then we'll talk about your hearing loss.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. So my fitness story probably starts, the interesting part, I suppose, in somewhere in my early to mid 40s. I ended up just being as sick and unhealthy as I've ever been in my life. And this actually ended up in a 3-day hospital stay. I was overweight. I was just stressed out of my mind. I had a very sedentary lifestyle. I was more invested in my career, I suppose, drinking daily. Just had all these very unhealthy habits, and it just ended up not well, right? I found myself very sick. And as I kind of looked around at my peers, those other guys my age, mid 40s, I saw that kind of was pretty common. There were a lot of us that were overweight, a lot of us that were sedentary, a lot of us just weren't really focusing on our health. And I'm talking about health now in a holistic aspect, just obviously your physical, biological health, but also mental health, spiritual health, emotional health. There didn't seem to be a very positive role model in my immediate circle of people that I was close with. And I kept hearing this message. Well, it's just all, it's very fatalistic. It's all downhill from here. And that's just how it is. What happens when you get old? Doesn't it suck? And kind of ha ha ha. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Is that my reality? Is that what I need to accept now? And that's what started me on this journey. First, I didn't want to be sick. So I started doing things to be not sick, just taking basic care of myself. But in order to do that, I had no idea what to do. I knew that things like, drinking every day, probably not real healthy. I knew that eating a lot of fast food, probably not so healthy. I knew that I needed to exercise. So I went down the Google rabbit hole, started researching healthy habits and how to optimize your health and how to lose weight and all these things. Long story short is I tried a lot of everything. And I can now say I'm almost 60. I'll be 60 in the spring. And I'll tell anybody who will listen, I'm as strong, fit, and healthy as I've ever been in my entire life. So I spent really the last decade after I got unsick, right? So I was not sick anymore. That led me to say, well, okay, what else is there? Can I really optimize from here? And so that led me eventually to, I retired from my corporate job that I'd had for 22 years, and I'm now a full-time online nutrition coach and personal trainer. So I work with men and women in their 50s and 60s who are looking to transform their health at this stage of their life.
Wow. Well, I'm over 50, substantially over 50. So I want to talk more about that a little bit later. But as a hearing loss and hearing health advocate, I'm passionate about talking about hearing loss. So you have hearing loss. So tell us about that. When did you discover that?
Okay, so yeah, there's been a running joke in my family going back. My kids are grown out of the house, but every birthday, every Christmas, every Father's Day, the joke would be, this is the year that Dad gets hearing aids, because I kept hearing from my family, you didn't hear us, you didn't hear us, you didn't hear us. And I thought to myself, I don't have hearing loss. I just denied it. And, they would say that and I would laugh, ha, 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 that's really funny. And I ignored it, frankly. And there were signs looking back that I did have hearing loss. It was very, very difficult for me, especially in, say, a a social environment. I was a salesperson. I spent many evenings with clients in restaurants where it's noisy. When I was out with friends and family at parties, it was pronounced that I just wasn't picking up all of the conversation. I just figured it's because it's noisy, right? And everybody can't hear in that environment. But very often my wife would elbow me and said, "Hey, he's talking to you. You're being rude." And I missed it. I completely missed that piece of the conversation. And then a funny thing happened. So you mentioned in the intro that I have a podcast, and I had the CEO, James Gilchrist, at the time of HearUSA on my podcast to talk about hearing health. I thought, well, this would be a subject that's interesting to my demographic, right? And throughout that conversation, I told him that story I just told you. I said, "Yeah, my wife and kids are constantly badgering me. Hey, you need hearing aids, you need hearing aids." He said, "Well, have you had your hearing checked?" And I said, "I think I did a long time ago." But at any rate, that's really the catalyst that started me on this journey in terms of hearing health. I went and got my hearing tested. I went to a Hear USA center. Behold, no surprise. Yes, you have some hearing loss, and they test specifically for hearing in noisy environments. Say, yeah, you're really having difficulties there. And they set me up with hearing aids and sent me on my way. And it was, I'm not going to lie, it made a huge difference for me, especially in those social situations. I spend most of my day I work from home. It's quiet here in the daytime. It's not a challenge for me here when I'm doing a podcast. And you saw when I first came on, I had this headset on, so I'm really in tune there. But when I'm out in public, when I'm out in social situations, I realize now that a lot of my, I guess, social anxiety for being in those groups was due to the fact that I just can't hear. I mean, I have to be really on and paying attention and focused at who's talking and really leaning in to make sure I'm not left out of the conversation. And now that I've corrected my hearing, that's much less of a challenge for me. It's much more comfortable going out in these situations, just being able to participate in the group, basically. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
The two things jumped out at me there. First of all, was how you denied your hearing loss, even though your family repeatedly told you that you were not hearing the way that you could or should. And but we continue to deny it, even in the evidence. If our family tells us we have hearing loss, we have hearing loss. That is the best, clue that we can get. So eventually, we all have something that makes us change. And for you, it was that conversation with someone else who I'm not sure whether he had hearing loss, but he was, let's call him a peer, but when you talk to someone else who has hearing loss, that can be life changing, and you're evidence of that. So that's amazing. That's good for you. Good for you. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about the philosophy of healthy aging. How does healthy hearing fit into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Frankly, one I really didn't consider until my own personal journey here recently. We now know, and I now know, that hearing loss is correlated with dementia and with Alzheimer's and with other conditions, right? But I have been a champion of holistic, healthy aging. That's my jam. That's what I do for a living these days. I'm very passionate about it. And when we talk about holistic health, we we can't ignore hearing health, right? Especially in my age demographic, and it's just really an important part of uh, you know, acknowledging and testing, just like you would acknowledge, hey, you're overweight, hey, your blood sugar's high, hey, your cholesterol's high. These are all things that if you were to tell me those things, I'd say, okay, we need a plan, we need a roadmap, we need a blueprint for solving this, for correcting this. And it's no different with hearing health, right? If you have hearing loss, then it is incumbent upon yourself to take responsibility for your health, get that tested, and find out what your options are for correcting that.
I just wanted to make a comment about the connection to dementia. The studies show that it is untreated hearing loss
Right.
Yeah, so that is
I have
so
read
when
that.
you
Yeah, I've read that you can actually reverse that by correcting your hearing loss. And
yeah, or
that's
you can
huge, right?
diminish it, or yeah. So
Diminish or yes. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. And the for me, it's not just hearing, it's communication. And it's all about this connection. So when we lose our connection with other people, and that's often you'll see in the elderly because they can't hear or for whatever, that that has impact on our health. And so it's about communication. Getting hearing aids helps you hear better, but it also is part of communicating better. I will never hear perfectly well. I will never hear well again, although with lifelong hearing loss, I've never heard well, but I can communicate better. And I think that's the underlying thing. You're about communication with your body and with your health and with other people. So, yeah, it's a really, really good point that I wish more people realized. Um, so the reverse of that, how can a healthy lifestyle, and you probably experienced this based on what you told me, how is improving our health and our lifestyle, how does that help us improve or deal with the stress that we feel as people with hearing loss, um, deal with our hearing loss and our tinnitus? I don't know if you have tinnitus, but many of us
Do
do.
not. Yeah, I
Oh,
do.
you are lucky. You are
Yes.
lucky.
So
Send up a little
so I
prayer for
understand.
that. But
Yes.
many of us do. And so tell me about how a healthy lifestyle can help reduce stress.
Yeah, so basically you can think of a healthy lifestyle as the tide in the bay, and all of the boats rise when that tide comes in. So when we take care of our bodies, and again, I'm talking holistically, so I'm bringing in the mental aspect, the emotional aspect, the spiritual aspects of health as well. But even just when we talk about moving our bodies regularly, so getting that exercise, and we talk about proper nutrition, when we are healthy, we show up as the best version of ourselves, the most capable version of ourselves, the most passionate, purpose-driven of ourselves version of ourselves. We show up as better sons and daughters and parents and grandparents and siblings and coworkers and bosses when we have this regular practice of self-care. And the opposite of that is when we allow our health to deteriorate, and certainly your hearing health would be in this bucket, our world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then as we improve our health, our world gets bigger and bigger. We have more opportunities, there's just more of the world that's open to us when we're healthy and vibrant and confident and competent. And certainly, I think that all of that goes a huge way towards, like I said, it's all of those boats rising. And, there's several things that being healthy includes, and it's not just lifting weights or getting your cardio or eating your vegetables or ensuring you're getting whole foods, but there's other things like managing your stress load. And although you may not be able to manage your stress, you can manage how you react to it. It's learning to connect deeply with loved ones and overcoming loneliness, et cetera, because we've got this loneliness epidemic now. It's learning to get healthy sleep and having that really healthy, steady sleep every single night. So all of these things will help improve the way you show up in the world and whatever that means to you, right? It's going to help you shine your brightest if you're really invested in a regular practice of self-care.
I love that. A couple of years ago, I took a mindfulness course, and I really felt changed after that. I had a new tool, and I find that deep, intentional breathing. All our lives we're told if you're stressed out, like take a breath, just stop and take a breath, and there's a reason for that. So,
Yeah.
intentional breathing, and for me, meditation, just even a few minutes, it just calms those neural pathways, and it
Yeah.
actually quietens to some degree the noise in the head.
Yeah.
When I exercise in a day when I'm actually getting heart pumping, cardiovascular stuff going, it has the same effect.
Yeah.
It doesn't obviously it doesn't completely eliminate, but it does help me manage my stress. And that was a real big change for me. A woman who's lived all her life with hearing loss and who's been an advocate for 30 years almost now. learning these new tools. And I think that that's important. There's always something we can do to make it better, to live
Yes.
better. So I love that, Kevin. Thanks for sharing that with it. The words that you used, you know, I think they resonate with me, and I'm sure they'll resonate with others. Are there any other little tips that you have for us before we sign off?
Well, I would certainly say, it can seem really overwhelming, and there's an overwhelming amount of information in my industry in the health, fitness, exercise space. And really, it's a matter of just the basics and almost common sense, but realizing that you have agency, that your health is more in your hands than you think. There are lifestyle changes you can make that can dramatically improve your quality of life, but really it's not up to your doctor. Your doctor is there to keep you, to help you when you get sick, to help you be unsick. They're not there to optimize your health. That's up to you. And so when you look at your health and caring for yourself, and remember I use those words, this intentional practice of self-care, this regular intentional practice of self-care, all of that's 100% up to you. And just seek out peers, mentors, coaches that you resonate with, that take a health first, long-term, holistic view of your health. I would just kind of leave you with that.
I love that. So it is up to me, but
It is.
I honestly can't do it on my own. I need help. I need resources. And so I thank you for that message. What we'll do, we're going to put your website and your podcast for people to see if they want to get in touch with you, because I really appreciate your message and your understanding of where hearing health fits into the big picture. Hearing aids are a wonderful first step, and there are other things that we can do to communicate better. And communication is the glue that connects us as people to each other. So it's very, very important. Kevin English, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. And I wish you a happy new year. And so thank you very much.
Thanks, Gail. It's been a pleasure.